Hey, welcome to This Explainer. We're about to dive into a really fundamental question about how our world works. Who really pulls the strings in politics? Who's actually making history happen? Let's get right into it. It seems like a pretty simple question, right? You think of powerful leaders, big countries, maybe huge corporations. But what if that simple, common sense answer is actually missing the most important part of the story? I mean, the default answer, the one we all kind of grow up with, is that history is driven by individual actors. Presidents, prime ministers, maybe even entire countries that we talk about as if they're single people with their own goals. We see them as the main players, the ones making all the moves. And this idea goes way back. Check out this quote from the philosopher Thomas Hobbes. He imagined people just popping into existence like mushrooms, fully formed, totally independent, with no history or social ties. It's a wild image, right? But it perfectly captures an idea that has dominated Western thought for centuries, that the individual is the natural starting point for, well, everything. But here's the thing. This focus on the individual wasn't some kind of accident. It's really the result of a long historical process, almost like an intellectual funnel that has slowly, over time, narrowed our vision to see only the actor and not the world that created them. So let's go down this funnel. It starts out pretty wide with liberal theory, which, put the self-interested, autonomous individual right at the center of politics. Then, the funnel narrows with the philosophy of science called positivism, which basically said that any real scientific explanation had to be broken down to the actions of individuals. And finally, it gets super narrow with things like game theory, which models the entire world as a game played by these pre-made actors who already know exactly what they want. You can see how with each step, the social context, the background, just gets pushed further and further out of the picture. Okay, so if the idea of the isolated actor is a bit of a myth, what's the alternative? Well, what if we shift our focus? What if we stop asking who does things and start asking what makes the doers in the first place? And this brings us to a really powerful new concept, the subject. And this chart just lays out the difference so clearly. On one side, you have the actor. They're seen as existing before society, with interests that are just a given. But on the other side, you have the subject, who is made by society. Their interests aren't a given. They're created. They aren't autonomous. They are fundamentally relational, defined by their connections to others. And this last one is a real mind-bender. They don't just use power. They are an effective power. This brings us to a huge idea: productive power. Now, this isn't the kind of power we usually think of, country A forcing country B to do something. No, this is the background power of social structures, of language, of history that actually creates A and B in the first place. It defines who they are, what they care about, and what they can even imagine is possible. It's the power that shapes the players before the game even begins. And this productive power, it works on different scales. At the macro scale, you have these huge sweeping discourses like capitalism or the Cold War that create broad identities like citizen or capitalist. Then, at the mesoscale, you have specific networks and institutions, like the world of diplomacy, which create specific subjects, like a diplomat. And finally, down at the microscale, a person actually becomes a subject in the very moment of doing something. Like, you become a soldier through the daily practices and acts of soldiering. Now, I know this might sound a little abstract, but we can see it play out perfectly in one of the most famous events in modern history, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Because when you look at it through this lens, you realize it wasn't just one crisis. It was at least 3 different crises happening at the exact same time. Okay, look at this. This is where it all clicks. For the United States, it was the Cuban Missile Crisis. This event produced the U.S. as the leader of the free world, defending against a sneaky aggressor. But for the Soviet Union, it was the Caribbean crisis, a story where they were the protector of socialism, standing up to an imperialist aggressor. And then for Cuba, it was the October crisis, where they were a sovereign nation under threat from a neo-colonial power. It's the same event, but 3 totally different realities, all produced by different social and historical contexts. So for the US, the whole Cold War narrative had created their identity as the global defender of freedom. And inside that identity, allowing Soviet missiles so close to home was just unthinkable. It was an irrational calculation, not really. It was a social necessity, completely dictated by who they understood themselves to be on the world stage. But, of course, for the Soviet Union and Cuba, a totally different story was playing out. a story built on a long history of U.S. interventionism. So from their perspective, putting missiles in Cuba wasn't aggressive at all. It was a purely defensive move to protect an ally from what they saw as an inevitable U.S. invasion. For the subjects they were, it was a perfectly logical move. So, why does all this matter? Why bother shifting from actor to subject? Well, because it gives us a completely new lens for seeing how power really works. Not just in these huge headline grabbing crises, but in the everyday world all around us. So here it is, your new analytical toolkit. The main takeaway is this: the individual actor isn't a given, it's a social and historical product. Power isn't just about control, it's this productive power that shapes our very identities and interests. And that means the most important question we can ask isn't just who did what, but rather what social forces made them who they are. Because once you start seeing that, you start seeing the hidden power structures everywhere. And that's the first step to figuring out how to change them. And that really leaves us with a final and pretty personal question, because this isn't just about world leaders or countries. It's about all of us. If our identities, our interests, our very sense of self are all products of these social forces, then what does it take to remake them? What does it take for us to become the authors of our own stories?